Mercy tips for Stadium. Hey there, my name's Niandra and I've gotten completely hooked on this game mode in the last month or so. In this video, I'll be going over some little things that have helped me as Mercy. One thing to note before we start, I mainly play her in first person because I found movement a lot easier and more enjoyable. However, I did recently start playing around with third person again, so this video will have a mixture of both. I'm not recommending one mode over the other, just do what works for you. Alright then, let's get started with general tips. Rounds in Stadium are quicker than normal Overwatch, meaning on modes like King of the Hill, the ticker goes up faster than you may expect. As Mercy, you may occasionally need to touch the objective to trigger overtime when no one else can get there. However, I kept having rounds where I didn't quite make it in time. I was leaving it too late because my judgment was based on years of regular Koth rounds. Essentially, you may need to push forward a bit sooner than you think to get to the point in time, although not too soon. I mean, it's just something you'll get better at over time. I've seen a few players say they sometimes struggle to tell whether they have their staff out or the blaster during a chaotic, messy fight in third person. In Mercy's hero options menu, you can set different crosshair reticles for the blaster and the staff to help separate them from each other. Weapon power and weapon speed do nothing for damage boost and only affect Mercy's healing. There is an epic survival item called Chain Evoker though, which makes damage boost better. Every so often I see Mercy players increasing their ability power, however it does nothing for her outside of two specific powers. The first being Wambulance, which heals your GA target for each meter traveled to them and scales that healing. The second is First Responder, where you and your ally gain overhealth after you res them and the amount received can be scaled. Do not sleep on attack speed. I see so many Mercy players who just don't touch the stat at all. Weapon power determines your healing output, but attack speed determines how often that output is, well, put out. There isn't a huge amount of attack speed items, so you likely aren't going to get this stat super high, but it's definitely worth considering if you have a spare slot or two. Attack speed also determines how fast you fire the blaster, which nicely complements the infinite ammo you get during Valkyrie. And thanks to Crepuscular Circle, Valkyrie is often your big power spike. If your aim is good, your damage output can be crazy, and if your aim is bad, who cares? You're firing 1,000,000 bullets a second, at least some of them have to hit, right? On that note, keep in mind that a lot of the Mercy exclusive items do not come with weapon power or weapon speed buffs. For example, Angelic Acrobats basically gives you Mercy's old movement back, but that's basically it. You don't get any power with it, and you don't get any extra shields or armor either. I'm not saying this item is bad, or that you should avoid any of the Mercy exclusive items, but it is important to consider your build overall. So like as a non-nuanced black and white example, if I throw together only Mercy exclusive items, we have higher utility and lower stats, whereas if I just grab generic items, we have lower utility and higher stats. You could think of this as a scale, and how you want to balance it will depend on the flow of your match and personal playstyle. High stats mean nothing if you can't stay alive, but high survivability also means nothing if your allies can't stay alive. Essentially, I just think everyone should consider what they could be sacrificing when they take up an item slot, plus the generic purple items do have some pretty good stuff attached to them as well. Your other support is likely going to be doing damage at various points, so it's important to keep up as rounds progress. Stadium has a handful of ways to increase your base movement speed, which is great, but it does mean it's easier to accidentally cancel your own reses. Extra movement speed means you'll leave the maximum res range quicker than you think or expect, which can catch you off guard. One good thing about the fast-paced nature of Stadium is that when allies have that full 12-second respawn timer, your window to potentially resurrect them will be pretty lenient. Last second revives are pretty strong in this mode and worth keeping track of because enemies won't always be able to watch an area for that long amount of time. Advanced Nanobiotics is a blue weapon item that gives a base 5% increased weapon power and also 10% attack speed for 3 seconds after you heal an ally. This item is especially good on Mercy in particular because it will permanently be active while healing someone, making it a great choice in the earlier rounds. Electrolytes was recently changed so that it activates after every time you respawn, and this does include being resurrected. Bad reses are extra risky in Stadium because if you bring someone back in a bad position or into a lost fight and they just immediately die a second time, you've handed the enemy a little bit of extra cash. As the match progresses, you want to be aware of what one-shot focus builds the enemy team is working towards. This could be a Reinhardt or a Juno going all in on ability power for their fire strikes and torpedoes. With Juno, there is a sound effect for when torpedoes have locked onto you, which is an indicator to fall behind cover. With Reinhardt, I'm very wary of approaching corners and choke points that he's likely to spam fire strikes at until I know he's used them, especially near the beginning of rounds. With third person, line of sight seems to still be based on Mercy herself rather than the center of your screen or your camera view. Thankfully, the small red X should generally tell you that you've broken LOS. That being said, I still think this is worth keeping in mind because you may have moments during tense fights where you think your beam should be connected because of where your eyes are looking, where in reality, Mercy herself doesn't have the angle. There's a handful of burning related powers with characters like Ashe, so do remember that health packs cleanse burn. With push, the robot's move speed is not affected by the number of players nearby, meaning you only technically need one person on it. As Mercy, you'll often provide more value by beaming the allies pushed ahead, making space as opposed to hanging back with the robot. Lastly, I'm not sure if this is a bug or a feature that's going to stay, but they recently changed Mercy so that activating Valkyrie during res will cancel the res. This can screw you over if, like me, you occasionally hold down Valk while resing to automatically use it once the animation is finished. However, I did have a moment where it might have been effective and allowed me to get away from a Reaper sooner. Moving on, let's look at power specific tips, starting with Threads of Fate. Your staff chains to your previous target for 3 seconds at 50% effectiveness. 3 seconds is a pretty long time, so you don't need to be flicking like this, but with good beam management, threads can have an almost constant uptime. This power is very flexible and can get a lot of cash in the early rounds. Make sure you're watching out for when 2 allies attack the same enemy, which I found especially useful if we're running like Junker Queen or Genji or something. Alternatively, your DPS might be holding slightly different positions. Plus, the secondary created beam has no range or line of sight restrictions. This means if you see an ally breaking away from the rest of the team and don't plan to follow their flank, you may want to throw a beam on them. If your team is running Reinhardt and Moira, or Ashe, threads can be really good at the beginning of the round to catch both Firestrike and Bionic Orb being thrown forward and let you damage boost both. Like with Mercy's chain damage boost perk in the main game, threads can be used to beam an ally that's pushed a bit further forward than you're comfortable getting to by attaching your beam to someone safer for an indirect connection to them. Also, if you have an ally that's almost full health and see someone else injured, you can move your beam onto that second person early and have the chain beam clean up the first. Next, Crepuscular Circle. While Valkyrie is active, both beams are automatically applied to nearby allies. This power is the key to the majority of Mercy builds, right? One silly thing to remember is that you cannot manually beam people while it's active, but it also won't automatically take your blaster out, so make sure you're not just hovering there staring at your team. I've had moments where I think Valkyrie is about to end, so I swap back to the staff, but actually there's a second or 2 left on it, so I miss out on a minuscule bit of pistol damage or whatever. This power stays active while resurrecting, so you can bring someone back without having to wait for another ally to be healed up first. It also complements your other beam perks very nicely. The created beams go through shields, meaning against a Reinhardt or whatever, you can get behind and either he'll turn around, which gives your team an opportunity, or he won't and you'll get shots into his back. This can also be useful against characters like Genji to avoid his deflect or D.Va to avoid DM. That being said, it may mean turning your back and therefore camera view to areas that enemies are likely to be in, which you should keep in mind. Be careful with this power against hit scan heavy comps, because while Stadium Mercy can get pretty tanky, she won't be immortal. Although getting in the faces of enemies can make it easier to land shots, sometimes it'll be safer to just poke fire from a distance near your team. Mercy's bullets don't have damage drop off, so it's not like you need to worry about that. If you have Guardian Angel target priority set to prefer facing target or prefer beam target, using GA while not looking at an ally will fling you back to someone you're connected to, which can be useful as a pullback but also potentially mildly disorienting. Next, Renaissance. After using Resurrect, trigger Valkyrie for 5 seconds. 2 things to note for this one. For starters, it does nothing if you res while Valk is already active, like it doesn't extend the timer by 5 seconds or anything. Secondly, like with activating normal Valkyrie, you do get a reset on the cooldown of Guardian Angel. This means you can super jump res and immediately reposition afterwards. Next, Serenity. Sympathetic recovery heals you for 20% more and will trigger even if healing a full health ally. This power will apply to your chain beams in Valkyrie and even while resing if you have Crepuscular Circle. Next, Equivalent Exchange. You have 3 charges of Resurrect with a 33% reduced cast time. With this power, Resurrect has no cooldown, meaning you can chain them, but once the charges are used, that is it for the round. You really need to gauge when a fight is already won or already lost, so you can just let allies respawn normally and save a charge. I will be real, it is extremely easy to straight up throw rounds with this power, meaning Restraint is a must-have skill. And even then, you don't always know how many fights there are even going to be in a round. Next, Glass Extra Full. Healing full health allies will give them up to 50 overhealth. The overhealth does not decay over time, so make sure you top up allies between fights and before the round has started so everyone has it out the gate. This power will also apply itself during Crepuscular Circle. Moving on, let's talk ally specific tips. With Mei, although you can't attach your beam when she's inside a regular stationary ice block, you can do so when she's got Colder equipped. She also has a power called Frost Nova where she'll do explosive damage upon leaving it, which can also be boosted as well. With Junker Queen, as someone who plays a lot of her in Stadium, she can be a really good damage boost target, especially once you're a couple of rounds in and she has a lot of ability power. Queen is one of those characters where you need to keep your beam attached to damage booster, but can do so even if you missed the initial attack animation and didn't have your beam attached at that point. Essentially, look out for her swinging her axe when you can. Because Junker Queen has a lot of lifesteal built into her kits, you can often damage boost her while she's somewhat injured and she'll just heal herself herself up. With her ultimate, I love to flick my beam onto her during the pause at the beginning and keep it on her until it breaks from her leaving range. As you can see here, I was healing her until she ulted, in which case I switched to damage boost. Jungle Queen also has a power called Reckoner's Roar where Shout will do AoE damage, which can also be boosted at any time. You can tell when a Jungle Queen has this power because the visual effect for Shout will have this light red bloody tint to it. With Kiriko, there's a power where she creates a clone after teleporting. Mercy can res those clones and it won't do anything because they just instantly die again, however it will eat your cooldown. There were a couple of frustrating moments where a clone would die right in front of me and I'd instantly res without thinking about it, which then just kinda screwed my team over. To fix this, I'd either flick my eyes to the kill feed first or try to be aware of who the clone was beforehand, which you can tell thanks to half their health being green. With Soldier, I like to look out for him taking the double helix power. He might take off angles at the start of fights to quickly burst someone down, which I'll try to damage boost. He also has a power where he'll ult for half a second after using a rocket. It can be worth looking for this little visor pull down animation to quickly flick your beam onto him if it's not already attached. With Orisa, I find she gets ult faster and more consistently than a lot of heroes in Stadium, mostly thanks to her central petal charge power. Terra Surge can be a very good ult to damage boost because Orisa is pretty tanky during it, and it also means she needs less charge to secure the elimination. Also, if you've got Crepuscular activated, the slowdown can make it fairly easy to whittle enemies down with your blaster. With Reaper, when he teleports, your beam will stay connected for 1.3 seconds, right? In general, this can be pretty useful if you respawn together since you can get an extra long GA out of it. In Stadium, Reaper has a power where he'll do a mini ult after teleporting. I've seen some players pick this round 1 and it feels a bit baity to me. It initially doesn't do a lot of damage, but it makes Reaper slow and vulnerable since he can't wraith form during it. If I see he has this power in the early game, I may try to flick my beam onto Reaper when I see him teleporting so he's a bit more sturdy. I do try to consider if beaming Reaper during a teleporter flank might give him away and actually be a negative. If he's running Silent as the Grave, the power that makes him quieter, I probably won't. Something to keep in mind though is that Threads of Fate's created beam is smaller and more transparent, which can make you less obvious. With Juno, you can physically see the two little torpedoes above her when the ability is active. I do try to look out for this, but it's not always easy considering the amount of visual effects in this game. When the torpedoes are out, I know Juno can't heal our team for a few seconds, and I'll gauge if I have enough leeway to flick damage boost onto her. And last of all, enemy specific tips. Against Ashe, I'm not sure if this is a bug or just intentionally left out of the description, but Bob Jr. sticks around for double the amount of time that a regular Bob does. That is potentially 20 seconds of uptime. I watch out for my allies attacking Bob Jr. so I can damage boost them, especially if he's contesting the objective and preventing us from getting progress. Like, let's say you're on Clash and attacking the second point nearer enemy spawn, he can easily stick around long enough for them to get back. Against Reaper, as I said, he has a power that makes him a lot quieter, which he'll probably use to sneak up from behind. You might be lucky enough to see him initiate the teleport, in which case you may be able to predict or preemptively react to where you think he'll end up. Otherwise, you'll want to keep looking around and keep track of whether he's missing from a fight. Against Kiriko, she has a power that allows her to teleport without a target. Kiriko will mainly use this to teleport behind your team, try to get a quick heal in before you notice what's happening, and then get out. Same sort of advice I give against Reaper, her attacks can be a little hard to notice when there's noise and visual effects everywhere, so make sure your brain isn't tuning these sounds out. Against Orisa, again, she often gets ult faster than other heroes, so I'm wary about using Guardian Angel to pass or get near her when I think she has it. Because of the smaller maps and people generally playing closer together, you may have less opportunities to escape if you do get caught in it. Also, the range of Orisa's ult seems to have an extra meter or so on it past the red visual circle on the ground. I've had a few moments where I was healing allies on the outskirts of Terra Surge thinking I was safe, only to be suddenly eliminated. Also, keep an eye out for Spin Stum update, which makes her javelin spin also deflect because you can absolutely team kill if you have the blaster out, especially be careful during Crep Circle. And that is all from me. Big thumbs up if you're watching this video during your Stadium queue, by the way. Unfortunately, as a support player, your biggest challenge in Stadium won't be anything mentioned in this video, rather the 15-minute wait before every game. Thank you so much for watching and have a nice day.